stuck into it. I'm not going to waste any time at all in preliminaries, because I want to leave as much time as possible for interactivity in this session. Let me welcome our two presenters, Sylvia and Marie. I think it's easier, rather than my potting your biography, for you to say a couple of sentences about each yourselves, and each other indeed, if you prefer. And then we're going to have two-part presentations, about 10 minutes each. I should be rigid and ruthless about that to enable voices to be heard. So, Sylvia.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm a sociologist and working in this field for I don't know many years. And this was our co-project with the Mari's institution, supported by Erasmus+, and I will talk about the evaluation part, and she will speak about the intervention itself.
Yeah, and my name is Marie Hundevat. I come from policy organization, really, Inland County Office, county municipality, I think is the correct English.
In which country?
In Norway.
In Norway, thank
yeah.
you.
So together, me and Sylvia, we have been doing this project, and I'm keen to just jump into it, but I can just say 2 words about my background, because I started as a theater artist. Then I trained as a teacher, and after that I've been doing my master's on cultural studies, which is like an interdisciplinary field of seeing things from different angles and seeing them together, which is actually a perfect fit for this project that we're going to talk about.
And just one more thing.
A bit louder if you could, I think it's going to be a bit louder.
Okay, so that we had a third partner and we forgot to mention. So Lamis is representing CC, Creativity, Culture and Education. This was a kind of collaboration between my institution, which is T2DOC, Center for Knowledge Management and Educational Research in Hungary and Central Europe.
Yeah. Can I ask you before we launch in, how did your partnership form? How did you come together to do this across country boundaries?
Good question. I think the correct answer is that we had both worked with CCE for a long time, and then we approached CCE to do a new project, and then we said, okay, we need a third partner. Do you have anyone up your sleeve? And then they said, we have just received a message from the Hungarian partner that they are up for new projects.
Right.
So we made a team conversation, and then we just quickly formed a relationship.
Speed dating. Okay.
Speed dating.
Yeah, you going to take it away? You starting?
Yes, I'm going to start and just tell you a little bit about the project. So I'll just jump into it. Okay. In Art of Learning, you are having fun while learning. And when you're having fun, it's easier for the brain to figure it out. That's a quote from one of our children. So, the backdrop. First, the Creative Partnerships project, which I assume you mostly know about. Hosted by CC for several years, and we have both worked with creative partnerships for many years. The issue from my institution, and this is a bit from our perspective, was that we lost funding because they told us that we want solid data, we want proof that this is working, because we're investing a lot of money in this kind of school development program without seeing any. We saw a lot of anecdotal evidence, like the quote I just showed you. Children really, really enjoyed this, but we were missing the last bit that our politicians felt they needed. It might feel, maybe some of you have been in a similar situation. Anyway, in general, we saw that there is a gap in research on art's impact, especially research that speaks to people who are not familiar with the arts and culture field from beforehand. So we felt like there is more to do here. We built it on an interdisciplinary theoretical framework, which was grounded in both pedagogy, psychology, and the arts. We made a structured research design. We made a replicable intervention model. We use control and intervention groups. So we had similar sized groups of children in both groups. We use a standardized curriculum and lesson plans. So it means we spend a lot of time developing curriculum that all of these children were doing in the same way. And we did mixed methods evaluation, qualitative and quantitative measures. And then we based everything on three pilots that had been tested previously in Scotland and in Norway between 2017 and 2019. So, how would we like a school that has been transformed by the art of learning to look like? I think this is an important question because we talk about art in school, we talk about creativity in school, but what is the purpose? Why are we doing it? What would we like it to look like when we've transformed it all in an ideal world? A Norwegian very old researcher called Helga Eng, she wrote in 1918 something I really like. She wrote that art should not be a subject in teaching, but a principle. All teaching should have an artistic touch. In this way, teaching can ignite life in the students' minds. So we are thinking in art learning that art should be like a principle, not a subject in school. It will be integrated across all subjects, not just taught as a separate discipline. And we've also looked at the artist's signature pedagogies, the original one by Thompson, which is leveraging the unique skills artists bring, fostering creativity, exploration, and critical thinking. And we have, I'm not saying we've come up with this expression, but we've used it a lot, and I've had it as like the headline over my desk for these 5 years, that we have been trying to create irresistible learning. And by that we mean that we try to make sure that the children are fully engaged in what we are creating for them. That they are physically engaged, socially engaged, emotionally and intellectually engaged, all at the same time. And it should be meaningful and it should be enjoyable. They should have fun. Yes, we are educating children to do something after school, but life is here and now. This is their everyday life. They should have a good life here and now, and that's fundamental. We can't have 20 years of pausing or waiting or preparation for something else. This is our life. We all need to have meaningful everyday lives to have to live a good life. Yeah. So the intervention project. It was a project that was based in Hungary, Norway, and United Kingdom, but the intervention was in Hungary and in Norway. The aim was to investigate the effects of integrating art and culture into teaching and learning, with a particular focus on something we call the executive functions. That's a neuroscience concept, which is a connection between something we call working memory, inhibitory control, and cognitive flexibility. And some major researchers are claiming that this concept, the executive functions, are more predictive for how you do it in school, more important than, for instance, your IQ. So these elements are very, very important. And the program overview, it looked like this. It was an interdisciplinary teaching program with art and culture activities at its core, involving 345 children and a similar number in control group. They started when they were in the grade 1 or 2, and in Norway and in Hungary, this means the year they are 6, turning 6. And they had, for every week, over 2 years, they had 270 minutes of art of learning lessons, meaning 3 times 90-minute sessions each week. We had, as we said, pre-written lesson plans and curriculum. and we employed artists to work as a peer or a critical friend, someone to discuss with, someone to work together with and collaborate with. And they were there parts of the time. Okay, so how did it look in practice? So this is an example. This is the theme number 14, which was called The Lonely Creature. This started with as a little bit similar to what you saw when you came here today, when you saw this small, what do we call it? Breadcrumbs, or yeah, these small things, yeah. In this project, it started with them coming into the space, and the space was completely turned around. So it looked like the chairs was up and down, tables were mashed around. They saw something on the floor. Someone had been there, someone very large. Who was this? So this was like the trigger that we gave them at the start. And we very often started these themes with something we call a trigger, something that will trigger their imagination. So for 2 weeks they worked with this lonely creature, which they found out that it was someone who wanted to make friends but didn't really know how to. So in Norway it was a troll. Appeared to be a troll. In Hungary it was a dragon, but this they worked with it through a drama. They worked with it in nature, looking for tracks. You can
Marie.
Yeah. They worked with it through writing letters to this creature, and they actually also made a club for lonely trolls. And that was they made all of these small trolls. They could put sock trolls or sock dragons. That they had conversations telling each other how they could be less lonely. So these trolls were communicating through their hands. So it was all of this was connected with the Norwegian national curriculum and also the Hungarian, but I'm showing the Norwegian example here. So in the Norwegian curriculum, we have overall learning objectives and we have subject-specific competency goals. So we connected this with both social studies, Norwegian language and literature, arts and craft, religion, philosophy and ethics, and physical education. So going through these 6 sessions of 90 minutes times 6, they covered a lot of topics from their curriculum. And the end products from the art of learning was several things that you can take on with you. We have the description of the program, how it was designed. We have all of the 48-week curriculum that can be reused. It's up for grabs in Norwegian, Hungarian, and English. And we have the training program and everything we created around. So, with that said, I'm handing, and this one, And we have created 10 pillars of holistic and irresistible learning, a 10-tip thing that we share with teachers so they can put on their desk. This is based on the creative habits of mind, the high-functioning classroom, also performative learning theory, and a lot of different concepts. Also the OECD, what's it called?
Design criteria.
Design criteria, thank you. So this is also a practical guide we want to give to we used to give the teachers. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, lovely. So just to be clear, those materials are available to people?
They are all available.
Yes.
And you will say how?
Yes. I have 10 of this here, and it's online and all
great
available. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Sylvia.
Okay. Thank you. So I will give you some.
Yeah.
So we have been working in this project with nearly 10 really passionate artists, like Mari, for example. So you were able to see the passion of her now. And that's why we were extremely interested in the impact of this very intensive program. And we were partners not just doing the pilot in Hungary and coordinating, but also we were responsible for measuring the effect of this thing. And I have to say that we had one more partner, which was not an official partner, but we used their methods, and it was Sedati from Chile. So they somehow in the last 10 years, they were working and focusing on designing a tool for capturing the executive functions of the brain of children. So our hypothesis behind this whole evaluation project was that how to measure the impact of a creative intervention on the development of executive functions of the brain in children in this age group. So they are all lower grade students. So our evaluation design was, as Mary said, it was a mixed method, but we tried to have a really interesting and creative quantitative research part, as well as a qualitative one. And you see here the main elements. So this yellow-red test, it is a digital test. It has 6 so-called games for children. And it takes about 15 minutes for each child to do it. And we did it 3 times. So it was an input measurement, output measurement, and after half a year, a follow-up measurement too. Originally, we planned to use an international validated test, which is called BRIEF, and it can capture the attitude of parents and teachers. And unfortunately, we were not allowed to use it, so because the Norway Research Ethical Committee said that there are some negative statements, and they don't want the parents to be faced with these type of negative statements. So unfortunately, this data collection didn't happen. We started to use this test in Hungary, but then we stopped when this ethical committee's results came out. We have a really big qualitative research around this, and I will show you that what kind of results we have from this research. So also we don't have it here, but there is a available qualitative and quantitative report online about this project. So just a few words about the sample. So in Hungary we worked with 3 pilot schools and 3 control schools, and in Norway it was 6 schools altogether. So it means that we had a double size sample in Norway, but I have to say that if you work in a research field, you know that this is a really small sample, this whole one. So we can't generalize these results. Of course, this was a pilot which tries to say something about the measuring options of these types of interventions. And now we would like to say that unfortunately, in spite of this very passionate intervention and very intensive intervention, we were not able to show a difference between the control and the pilot groups. And it is a really huge question, and that's why we wanted to bring this question here, that maybe that together we can find some explanations for this. So you see here that this is a means of initial and later scores in 2 countries, for the treatment group and for the control groups. And it shows that from the beginning to the end, the children's development went parallelly together, and not just in Norway and Hungary, but also with the control group in both countries. We have many details and different measurements in the report. I just highlight a few. And this is, for example, that when you check the age range or the school size and the country, so it doesn't show any significant difference at all. And after having many analyses, we can say that the only positive results what we can show you, this is written here, that although the test could not detect group differences, the results show that students share similar developmental paths across systems, schools and backgrounds. And for us in Hungary, this is really important, and not just in Hungary, but we work in Slovakia and in Romania as well. So when the teachers have this kind of preconcept or assumption that children with socially disadvantaged background, they are not able to progress as their peers, but now we have absolutely results which show that proves that children from a completely different education system like Norway with different backgrounds, they progress in the same way. And not just with Norway, if we compare, but their non-disadvantaged pair with their non-disadvantaged background peers as well. So it is somehow a kind of interesting result, I think. And this week or next week, a new publication will come out in the Journal of Intelligence, written by Professor Rosas, who was the developer of this yellow-red test, and his team. And this is just from a manuscript which I got, and they made a big sample research in Thailand, and these are about the same with the same activities, and you see that these are our results there, that how in each working memory or cognitive flexibility or inhibitory control the children progressed absolutely on the same way like the children in Thailand. So somehow I think that this tool can be a really good measurement tool for being an alternative for IQ testing in the education setting, and showing that it can show individual differences or individual progression, but not difference between groups.
2 minutes.
Okay. Just the main qualitative research results. We have 5 different statements I would like to share with you, and our qualitative evaluation is based on focus group discussions, semi-structured interviews and classroom observations in both countries. And we used a kind of coding technique which enabled us to compare the Norway and the Hungarian data, and it is readable in the report that how we did it. And we highlighted just some key findings. So the first one is the students experienced learning as more engaging and creative, and this information is coming from parents, teachers and students, of course. The next one is that students prefer active collaborative learning experiences, so they all refer to those activities where they were physically, socially, emotionally engaged, not just intellectually. The next one is that, and I think this was the crucial thing here in this project, that students see mistakes as opportunities to learn, and it shows the mindset change of teachers. So somehow this is not just about students, of course, but this is mostly about the teacher's attitude towards these mistakes and incorrect answers. Okay. The first one, that creative learning environment supports self-expression and agency of students. I think that you have many experiences like that in this room, so later on we can talk about it if it's needed. And the last one, and I think this is the most important finding for us, that arts-based pedagogy fosters inclusion and provides equitable learning opportunities for all students. It was a really long intervention for 2 years, and those children who had a really difficult background at home, they also progressed extremely well, and their language skills and creativity was absolutely increasing. And our main conclusion, and I put Bill Lucas's frame here, this 5 habits of mind or creative dispositions, how we call it. And we highlighted, we don't have time, but I show you just one that I tried to highlight those competencies which was proved to have. For example, this collaborative one, and all these competencies are creative competencies or building blocks of creativity, and we think that in this project we would be able to show, not just in a qualitative way but also in a quantitative way, that the creativity of children was nurtured and it developed during these. And these are the last questions and the last slides, that these findings highlight the limits of standardized cognitive tests in capturing educational success. Executive function tests alone cannot reveal differences between groups as shown in our study, and the art of learning's most meaningful outcomes, which is creativity, resilience, engagement of children, and the changes in classroom culture, may not be reflected in traditional assessments. And our question is that how can we measure these types of progresses, and how to prove what teachers, students, artists, and school leaders and parents claim after this project and during this project. So,
thank you, Sylvia, very much indeed. Great. Well, we've got about 20 minutes. Yeah. We've got about 20 minutes left, so let's use that really productively if we can. Can I ask, you are the third leg of the kind of partnership. Would you like to add a postscript or a commentary? You might explain to people who you are and how that.
Sure. So my name is Denise, and I'm the Associate Director of CCE, Creativity, Culture and Education. So CCE is a charity based in the UK, and we've been working for around 16 years around creative learning and how we can support initiatives and organizations like Marie and Sylvia's organization to really sort of flourish. I started off working with CCE as a partner in Australia. So I set up a program very similar to the Art of Learning called Creative Schools, and I think Bill will be talking about it later. So we did a lot of work in terms of actual work in schools. We ended up, our goal was to work with 10% of all schools in Western Australia. And that was really to kind of create a bit of momentum across the state to really sort of develop an interest in creativity. And it's not just this kind of fluffy thing on the side, it's actually a core thing. And I think what was really useful, and I know you said like with this test it wasn't, like it was harder to prove, but I think the success that we saw there was that we had a lot of schools that had a lot of trouble with literacy. So we had a really big focus on how can we use creativity and Bill's 5 habits of learning to really improve literacy in particular. And I think we had around probably 40% of the schools a significant increase in their literacy. We had really positive sort of statistics around attendance. So in some of the schools where attendance was a big issue, either because it was like disadvantaged communities or schools with sort of high numbers of Indigenous or First Nation students, we had significant increase in attention and retention, and well-being as well. So I think it was really obvious that this type of pedagogy is really effective. But you know, like you, I think it was is always trying to kind of show this. So we had a mixture of sort of qualitative and quantitative measurements, and I can share if anyone's interested in some of that. So I ended up, after working in Australia and sort of having a program that sort of ended up being taken on by the Department of Education, which was really then ended up making it quite sustainable. I think my interest was how to work with CCE and sort of to basically sustain these programs, because we know that it works and we know there's a lot of like big impact, but then what happens when these artists leave or this program ends? So I think that for me was a really important thing to work with.
Okay, thank you. What I think you're highlighting there in terms of the history of all of this stuff is this constant dilemma that you have between attempting to show with other kinds of measures and in other kinds of domains the impact of creative work, whether it's executive functions or academic success, literacy scores, and question, should we be seeking to protect and promote work in creativity on those grounds or on the grounds of improving creativity in itself? By the way, I think it's useful, very useful, to report negative results and not simply, yeah, we did it. Anyway, that's a remark. So, other people who would like to pick off, either with questions or remarks? Yes, go.
Yeah, I was wondering, it's interesting you picked up on the attendance. I was just wondering if you noticed any difference there on attendance or other measures of engagement, like behaviour for learning, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we have seen from some of the Norwegian schools, especially, I got reports now recently that from the principals that they are seeing that they can detect in the attendance list which is the art of learning classes, because they have lower, not lower attendance, but the opposite, higher attendance than the average in their school. So I think this is something, amongst other things, this is something we would be very interested in picking up on and doing some follow-up research on. I think attendance is one thing, and I think how they're actually doing it on the long term in their regular education, like how are their test scores when they go higher up. We have, it's a lot of things we would like to follow up, and that's one of them. And I would just also say that from all of the Art of Learning schools, all of them wanted to continue because they saw that this was a very good way of engaging their students, and they saw the point, and some of them still work like this.
Just one sentence that in Hungary we have chosen one class which we try to follow. It means that we try to follow 30 students, which is a small group of children, but we will follow them for years. We decided, and we have done a kind of follow-up, not just for Art of Learning, but our creative partnerships students as well. It was a kind of survey, and the biggest difference between the control and the pilot group was about the learning motivation of these children. So we asked also a question if they like going to school, and there was such a huge difference at the end of the last academic year that those children had just really high scores on this question, while the control children at the end of the year, it was very low. So somehow the learning motivation is absolutely affected by these types of methods and methodologies.
Okay, who else left? Bill?
Thank you so much. I think that the focus on attendance and engagement is super important. We've got a global crisis at the moment, and I'm not just talking about the teachers, sorry. But I think part of this is also about re-energising the teaching profession, because many colleagues go into that thinking that the true purpose of education is to encourage development of creativity, back to value expression, and all these other things, not an either or. And this first primary aim has kind of got disappeared. So I think it's fantastic. There's huge data from the Creative Partnership data set that shows attendance and engagement. It's about the only thing we can be really sure about. In England, the Creativity Collaborative is showing the same thing. It's also showing how teachers become re-engaged in the true purpose as they might articulate teaching. So I think it's fantastic.
Can I just add a postscript to that? In a sense, you chose a really difficult age group to which might manifest those kinds of shifts, because the early primary curriculum is much more arts-based, much more play-based. I mean, the problem, as we all know, is up to the same. So when you look at what happens with control groups at older age groups, on those dimensions particularly, you get massive differences. But anyway, sorry, who else?
I can just say a little bit about why we chose the younger one, but it could have looked, it was not because that was the easiest age group, it was because the executive function and the neuroscientists said that if we're going to be able to grasp anything within a quite short time frame, our chances are larger the younger they are.
So that was the reason why we chose the younger ones. But it doesn't mean we don't think it's relevant for other
of course.
age groups, of course.
I was pointing to the difficulty of noting differences between control groups, but anyway. Yes, thank you. Would you like to say who you are?
Sorry, my name is Debbie Connell, Trinity College. I'm doing a PhD. I really found it very fascinating what you talked about and then the project. Thank you very much. My question is about attendance. 5 to 7-year-olds, do they make decisions as to when to come to class themselves, or is this the decision of the parents? So how do you say then that the attendance was better if it's not their decision? I agree with motivation, definitely, but attendance?
I can just explain, because this was in 2021 till 2023, and now we are at the other half of 2025. So the principals who called me up now recently was about their attendance now. So like 4 or 5 years later, when they are in grade 4 or 5. So what they said is that their statistics generally, and every year it's the same, the attendance rate goes like this from year to year. So the attendance is dropping from year 1 till year 7. That's consistent across all the schools. But then they see this group who is just going like this. So it's their attendance haven't dropped like the other grades. So that's why they told me now that something is happening here in this statistics. So we are going to follow it up more. But
Is it the pupils or is it their parents? Because at that age, I don't know if children can decide themselves not to go to school. Or
But it's, I've got a sore tummy. I don't feel well, you know.
Somebody's not been nice to me.
Yes, but
Absolutely. Do I really have to go today? Can I just have a mental health day?
Yes, but I think this is a really relevant question because we had children coming from so-called segregated zones. So it means that we work with Roma kids as well who lived far away from the school itself, and they had to walk to the school at least 3 kilometers to the school and 3 kilometers back. And sometimes this is really difficult to go to school during winter. And those children who took part in this class 3 times a week on those days, they were absolutely there. So it was I think this was the decision of the children to go and walk there because it was their effort to do. And also in Norway there were very small size schools, which it is always a question that to go to school or stay sometimes at home. And this is somehow helped children to have this motivation to go to school.
Okay, thank you. At the back.
Hi, it's not a question, I'm more just a comment. I'm from the Australian Department of Education. I think the results on attendance sort of a year or 2 years later are really interesting. I guess my assumption when this debate around attendance started was, well, if I think of me as a child, if I went 6 weeks to school and it was really interesting and engaging, and then suddenly that program ended, and by comparison, the lessons I'm having seem rather boring, maybe I might drop attendance. But if you're saying that these children, a year or 2 years later, that the attendance was not following the same trends as other children, that's really interesting and definitely confounds the assumptions that I would have.
And I just have to say this is something we need to look more closely into. So it's 2 principals who've told me this. We haven't done any proper research into it, but we would like to.
But based on, but there is, I think, a kind of qualitative based answer, and this refers to, I would like to refer to these creative dispositions, because during these 2 years, the teacher's mindset has changed and tries to support a kind of collaborative community in the classroom. And also the persistence of children developed a lot. So it is absolutely identifiable from the interviews that, and they are much more disciplined. So all these 3, and of course imaginative and inquisitive, but this disciplined and being persistent, it somehow shows this, I think, that this is in the background.
Janet.
I'm wondering if the creative habits of mind or something that the children learned about, and they learned to sort of think about it for themselves and build their own self-regulation skills at that young age.
We didn't articulate that with the children.
But yes, indirectly yes, because those artists at us who were in this program, they used to use this framework as well. So they were trained creative partnerships artists, and they had a huge impact in the classroom on the teachers and on the class community, and also including parents, because it had open days and parents were able to come and join, and they heard a lot about this program from their children.
Yeah, and then of course when we worked developing the sessions, we used this and other, we looked at things with different perspectives, like, okay, so how is this session now covering the creative habits of mind? Is it covering the high functioning classroom, etc.? And then, okay, so in this today's reflection, maybe we should focus on inquisitiveness, for instance. And then we asked the children questions about that. So, and then over 48 weeks, we covered all of it, but at least it was not we didn't say the word creative habits of mind as far as I'm concerned with this 6, 7, 8. It was there. It was definitely there.
Encouraged to persist and so on. So.
Yeah,
It was the
definitely.
artist's duty to use it.
Yeah.
I think you raise a really interesting question, though, Janet, about whether one is explicit about these qualities, whether they're in this zone or others such as persistence or empathy. I was in an Australian classroom a couple of months back where all these qualities, however you want to describe them, transversal, whatever, were made very explicit by badges, and kids were being trained to recognise the behaviours in other kids and kind of acknowledge that. And the discussion was more sophisticated than you could imagine, that young children can recognise those qualities. So I think it's a really interesting space to explore.
Yeah, and I also have always liked this because it's self-assessment. Because I'm just going to impose an assessment about things that are very internal.
Anyone want to raise final points and take it in a different direction? Bill again.
It was the same direction. It's going to support what you were saying. The OECD SERI project that Sylvia and I and others were involved in colleagues here in Wales found that intentionality was absolutely critical. Then what language, what level of language you have, that's a classroom decision. So it might be very small, I'm going to show this later on, you might be using colours or animals or characters from the stories, and then as you get older and more sophisticated, it's going to change. The intentionality and what we think of as kind of split screen, you're both in the world of history and you're in the world of a particular creative habit.
Any other comments, questions? In which case, just a minute left. Where next? What are you thinking? You started to hint at that. But, I mean, God, for so many years I've seen research projects come, let's see if we can show a difference in literacy. Let's show if we, all those kind of questions which people believe that policymakers want and need and will be persuaded by. I no longer think they will, actually. And I think we have to stand our own ground. So this work, in its own right, for its own purposes, for different kind of outcomes, such as engagement and so forth. But where do you think you're going to take it next? Are you going to hang in with executive functions? Are you giving up on all of that?
And no, we wanted to continue within a horizon frame, but unfortunately we didn't succeed because we wanted to bring this type of experiences into the teachers' training as well. So we had a kind of agreements with universities to use this and try this as a pilot course, and we hope that it will continue. And but I have to say that it was extremely interesting for me, and I think for me or for us it was the biggest success, that those parents who are really coming from a really poor background or having a really poor background, they just contacted us after this project asking if they can pay for artists to be at the school and to be continued. And it was a kind of empowerment from our side to them, or vice versa. So it's quite interesting, and now we have classes paid by parents.
Really?
And it is. I think this is the indicator for success.
Marie, last word?
Yeah, I'm really wanting to get this way of working into as much of society as possible. And how do we do that? That's the big, hard question. And I think in my mind, teacher education is key, because we need to work both from bottom up and from top down, because we need the teachers to be able to do these kind of things on their own. And we need them to get peer support in their school. We need them to be able to go to and practice this with a school that has this installed already in their everyday life. So we need to work from all sides at the same time, I think, in order, because it's going to fall if it's just from one end. So I would like your ideas on how to do
coffee
that.
breaks before that. So
yeah.
thank you both very much indeed.